What's up, guys? Welcome back to Honda How To. I wanted to tell you guys that the intro to this video got corrupted, so I'm shooting an intro now. I'm in my house. If you hear a lot of background noise, we have the washer and dryer going. I'm in my basement in my man cave. So this video we go over how to build a B16. It's not for turbo or anything, but these rules do apply if you want to use this reference for a turbo build. You know, obviously there will be a little bit of different things, ring gaps and so on and so forth. I get into that in the video. And I don't measure bearing clearances because I measured them prior to this video about 2 weeks ago, but I'll explain that in the video later. For now, I just wanted to make a quick little intro, and I also wanted to have you guys check out a buddy's YouTube channel. I actually work with him, and him and his friends are trying to do their own YouTube channel. They're great kids, young guys. They do a lot of crazy stuff, like water skipping on a timber sled across a lake. I mean, some pretty wild stuff. So if you want to go give them a subscribe, that'd be awesome. Their YouTube channel is called VJ Productions. I'll leave a link to their YouTube channel down in the description, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So I have to assemble the cylinder head. Came back from the machine shop. We gotta put the rockers back in, the LMAs back in, and we'll set the valves when it's in the car. But here's the block. That's the block we're gonna be using. All the parts are freaking behind me here, okay? And funny story here, you guys haven't seen this car yet. This is my new car. It's a 1996 Honda Civic Hatchback. It is, it's like lower than base. What's lower than base? Like extra base? Well, anyways, it's extra base, and it's just got a tiny little bit right there. So it's not too bad. It's got the SI wheels on it. But like, look at this thing, guys. It has manual mirrors, okay? Of course, it's 5-speed. Come on. When you hit the turn signal, it doesn't click back. You have to lift up the turn signal. Basically, no power steering, so it's a sealed rack, which I'm super happy about, because you have to loop the actual assisted power steering racks. The only option this car came with from the factory is a tape deck player and air conditioning, which the air conditioning doesn't work anymore because it's pump shot. So we're gonna tear that stuff out. But I'm not gonna get into details about assembling the head because it's pretty straightforward. We're just not gonna go through it. I'll time lapse it, but I'll assemble this head first, and then we're gonna get to the block and all that stuff and measuring stuff. It's gonna be a grand old time. So everybody just sit back and enjoy. Well, I guess we weren't recording the caps being put on. I forgot to hit record. Anyways, for all you people that are super crazy about torque specs, so there is a sequence to this, okay? So these bigger ones they get torqued to 19 foot-pounds, and then these end ones get torqued to 9 foot-pounds. And there is a sequence, so just look it up. Super easy. Just look up B16 or B18 or whatever B series you're looking at. B series cam cap torque sequence. That's all you gotta look up. So when we go over here to the VTEC solenoid and this water neck, I couldn't find any torque specs on either of these. If anybody finds them, let me know. I'm sure they're in probably like a Haynes manual or a Chilton's manual. I don't have one. I've been just getting my torque specs off of Honda database. So since these 10 mils are similar size to these end caps, I just torqued them 9 to 10 foot-pounds just to be safe. You don't want to reef on them. They're pretty small bolts and you don't want to snap them off. So I just went with that. If anybody knows the actual torque for them, just please leave it in the comments below. So now we are gonna get ready to assemble the block. Okay guys, we got the block here. I gotta do a little bit of cleaning because there's some dust in here. I put some WD-40 in there since it was sitting. So this engine that we're building right now, this is built for naturally aspirated. We're not turboing this engine, but I just wanted to give you guys a guide on actually how to build an engine from scratch, so it doesn't get any more scratch than this. So a buddy of mine standing here, I was explaining to him, he has never heard of a block guard. So I was explaining to him, if you guys don't know what a block guard is. So a block guard essentially sits in between the sleeves here. You have coolant running through this passage here that keeps these sleeves cool, okay? So what you do is you put a block guard in here to prevent the sleeve from rocking back and forth under high load. So you see these people you see these people put in block guards, and what that essentially does, your sleeve is supported at the bottom and it has no support up here. So under high load, that sleeve will rock. So that block guard fills in this void up top here, and it prevents the sleeve from rocking back and forth. And if your sleeve rocks back and forth, you know what happens. Boom. Now CSS on the other hand, which I've used them before and they're freaking awesome. Go check them out. CSS does a little bit differently. They anchor the actual block guard in so it doesn't move. And I freaking 100% guarantee their product. It's freaking awesome. So we're gonna clean this up a little bit, and then we are gonna do some bearings, crank, pistons. You guys know the drill. So let's get to it. Okay guys, and another thing I wanted to explain to you, in case you're kind of new to this. So on this block, I kept it standard bore size. So a lot of people, if they're rebuilding an engine, they'll overbore it. Usually, you know, something super small, because I mean, you don't have much material of sleeve here, okay? And then what I wanted to explain to you guys is I didn't overbore this. What I did is I sent the block off, and I had them do a whole bunch of other stuff to the cylinder head, to the crank, blah, 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 blah. But I had them resurface the block deck, okay? And what I had them do is I had them hone the cylinder walls, okay? So what a hone is, let me get this dust off. What a hone is, you hear people talk about a crosshatch section, okay? So what that crosshatch section does is initially when you first start your engine and you're starting to break it in, a little bit of oil will seep into those little scratches in the cylinder wall, and it'll give the piston rings a chance to grab that oil and send it up and down to lubricate. And over time, the crosshatch will, you know, certainly fade away, but that's what that crosshatch is for. And a lot of people didn't know that, so I just thought I'd try to explain it to you guys. Alright guys, we got done cleaning the bottom of the block, and I also pulled the squirters, those guys there. And I made sure I ran some brake cleaner through them, made sure they weren't plugged. And these are torqued to, what were they? 12 foot-pounds. So torque those to 12 foot-pounds. And then I think now we're ready for some bearings. So let's get to that. Alright guys, we're gonna throw in the engine bearings. Be sure always to use assembly lube on bearings. This is what I get at my work, so this is the stuff I'm gonna be using. So now we already checked these bearings, and yeah, I get it guys. We checked these bearings with Plastigauge. And if nobody knows what Plastigauge is, I know most of you do. So all you do with Plastigauge is it's exactly what it is. It's plastic, and it's almost like a string, okay? So you pop your bearings in. So you pop in this one and then the one on your cap, okay? You set your crank in first, make sure you put all your bearings in, and then you lay a little tiny strip of that Plastigauge on the bearing itself, okay? And then you torque your crankshaft down in its sequence, okay? Make sure it's torqued down, then undo it in reverse sequence, okay? You pull the crank out, and what that Plastigauge will do is it'll smush and smear, and the thickness of that Plastigauge, that's exactly what you want to measure. There'll be a little gauge on the packet of Plastigauge that you can measure the clearances. I had to measure mine because I had my crankshaft micro polished and balanced, so I wanted to make sure it was in within spec for clearances. I don't have any more Plastigauge on me. I did that off video a few weeks ago, and I just was waiting on parts to get my engine done, so I didn't really film measuring the clearances for that. But we'll show you some other stuff, and you know, we'll kind of keep you informed. If anybody has any questions about like the Plastigauge and how to use it, just ask in the comments. I can kind of step you through it. It's pretty easy. It's a little intimidating, but once you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy. So let's pop some bearings in this bad boy. Okay guys, I went up front. We are completely out of latex gloves, so I wash my hands pretty good. You just want to keep this area super clean. You don't want any dust flying around. I mean, it looks dirty, but it's pretty clean. So you want it as clean as possible. Alright, let's put some bearings in. Okay, a quick little tip for people that don't know. As you can see, where the bearing's supposed to sit, right in here. So when you're building a B series, you'll get two different types of main bearings, okay? You'll get this one, which is just a solid piece of bearing, okay? And then you get this one. This is the one that actually goes into your block because it has chamfered oil orifices, and obviously you have an oil port here, okay? If you put this bearing down there, it'll block the oil passage. Make sense? Okay. That's about it. Okay, now thrust washers. If you've ever seen my other video, the B16 build, we are going to install thrust washers. And if you don't remember that video, so there's two ways. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. See how it's got those little notches there on both thrust washers? Okay, you want those facing outward, okay? So let me see if I can get you in here. So right in those slots, okay? Right in that slot there, and that slot there. So you want those little dips to be facing like that, okay? You want the smooth side facing the block, and the dips facing out towards the crank, okay? Make sure you put assembly lube on these as well. Okay guys, so if you haven't seen my previous video, I'm going to explain this to you. So there is numbers on these caps, okay? See, here's a 1. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Okay, so if you guys didn't see in my previous video, these caps, on the previous video the caps weren't numbered because we had a girdle, but these caps are numbered, okay? And 1 goes right here on the snout of the crank where your drive belt would be, okay? And the arrow is pointing out, okay? Now, in order to know which way the cap goes, you don't want the arrow facing towards the back where the transmission would be bolted. You want it facing out like that, okay? And another thing you can look for is this little notch here, okay? See that guy? You always want it butted up against the notch on this bearing as well. So you can't really mess it up. You don't want a notch on both, you know, one side and one side. You want them both on the same side so they interlock the bearing. Okay? And always, 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 with these bolts, soak them in oil before you torque them down. Okay? Now we're going to torque the crank caps. So there's going to be 2 steps of torque. The first step is going to be 18 foot-pounds in the sequence, and then the second step is going to be 56 foot-pounds. And you just want to repeat the sequence for both times you torque it. And yeah, let's get to that. Okay guys, now I'm going to show you how to gap the rings. So what you want to do is you want to get your top piston ring and you want to set it in the bore. Be very, very gentle. You don't want to break this. Just if it's binding up, just ease off of it and just be careful. Okay. And then you want something to go down and square it up. Make sure I got my gap there. Okay, we're good. Alright. So I like to use a good old trusty piston. Just make sure it's nice and square and straight. Okay, just like that. Okay, now what we are doing is we are measuring, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but this little guy right here. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. And it's blurry. Sweet. Don't knock my camera skills, boys and girls. Zoom it out. Oh, come on. Jeez Louise. Okay, anyways, you get the gist. That little guy right there. We're going to measure that, okay? Now, on a B16, we are going with the OEM specification because this is obviously NA. And you can just look it up online. It'll tell you exactly what the ring gaps are supposed to be. What was that, 20 thousandths? Something like that? I think 0.20 was the B16 for the top ring. So, I know this feeler gauge is gross, but if you see that, it fits perfect. And that was the minimum, or this is the minimum it could be. So it could be a little bit more. I can't remember what exactly like the top end was, but it fits perfect. And it doesn't have much room beside, so I would say this one is within spec. There's just a tiny little bit. Now, if this was a turbo setup, you would want to open this ring gap up, okay? Because what happens is under heat and under load, those two sides of the ring will they'll butt up together, and it'll basically take the top of your piston off. If you ever hear of somebody say that the ringland took out, the ringland took out the engine, that's what they're talking about. The piston ring butted up together and basically ripped off the top of the piston. So when you're running a turbo application, you want a bigger gap, not too big, because if you use too big of a gap, you'll consume a lot of oil. But there's charts and stuff that you can go by on piston ring gap for like street use or certain horsepower applications, stuff like that. But we're going with OEM specifications for this because this is just an NA build and we want it to be pretty close to factory. So that is the top ring. Okay, so we're gonna zoom back out here. Okay, now we're gonna check the second ring, and I usually don't check the oil ring because I think the oil ring should be okay. I mean, there isn't much. You can check them, but I guess I've never really checked them. They're usually, if your two top rings are in spec, chances are that your oil ring is probably right there along with it. I mean, it's a very important ring, but I mean, okay. What was the second ring? What was the OEM spec? Wasn't it 0.45 or something like that? 0.4? Okay, so this one was supposed to be 0.4, which, again, that's at the minimum. It can be a little bit wider than that, but it fits just perfect in there. You don't want it to be like, you know, hey, you have to like saw your way in there. You just want it to have like a nice, good amount of drag on it. It's a feel thing. You'll understand once you start doing it. Yeah, you just want a slight bit of drag, and this is good. It's within spec. Okay. Now, another thing that I was gonna explain to you guys. See, on these rings, let's see if I can get you in here. Yeah. So this ring says top. I don't think you can. The glare from the light is kind of. Here, let me see if I can, like, whatever. Right here it says top, okay? And some rings don't have that, but the nice thing is most of the rings, when you get them brand new, they'll have a marking of some sort, like a letter or whatever. Like this one, for instance, has an N. You always want the letters to face up. Never face them this way. You always want them facing up, okay? All right, now, I'm gonna put the pistons in. You guys have seen this in my other videos. It's pretty straightforward. I might show you guys the last piston to get popped in, but it's pretty easy. So I'll just pop these three in and I'll show you the last one quick.
Shit.
Okay guys, and another thing, when you put your rings on, there's actual diagrams for the rings. You want your gaps to be away from each other. You don't want two gaps butted up against each other. For instance, like this top gap, and let's see if we can get this gap over here. You don't want that, okay? See that? You want them facing away from each other. And actually there is a diagram, because I'm pretty sure it's one here, one here, one here, and one here. Because two of them are for the oil rings, and then the one's for the top and one's for the middle ring. I would just refer to that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but you just don't want them butted up against each other. That's not, then you'll get some pretty good blow by. So, okay, I just thought I might add that. I'm gonna pop these in quick and I'll show you the last one. Okay guys, we're on our last piston. You know the drill. Make sure it's nice and lubed up. Lube up the bore really well. Okay, now here's a trick, okay? So if you're building with stock pistons and connecting rods, you're gonna have these studs sticking out, okay? Now, if you're running H-beam rods like Eagles, they actually come with ARP bolts, okay? Well, with these studs, here, let me get a bearing in here quick. Come on. Look. Let me put some assembly lube on it. You know the drill. Okay. Now with these, this is pretty dangerous pounding this into your block. Okay? You got these guys here. You hit it too far down in the bore, you smack the crank. Then you're really screwed. Then you're gonna need some work done to your crank. Now I'm trying to find, there's one, where's the other one? All we're gonna use is just some fuel line. So all you do is find some fuel line that'll fit on the bolt or the stud, and you just kind of wiggle it on there, wiggle it on there, and there we go. It looks a little ridiculous, but it works. If you hit your crank, it's just rubber, so it's just gonna give and you ain't gonna scratch your crank. Now, the last time I built an engine, I promised you guys that I was going to get a, you wanna hold that quick? I was going to get a different piston ring compressor. Well, guess what? I didn't. So, I'm still using my dinosaur here. Yeah, and it's put in 3 so far, so we're gonna go for 4 now. See if it works.
Check the rings.
Yeah, rings are good. Make sure. Okay. And if you guys watched my previous video, or not my previous video, my D16 build, you already know. Don't ever buy one of these ring compressors. They suck. They're not good. I mean, it was okay when I first got it, because, I mean, it was brand new and blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. And it worked great. But the problem with these is it creates so much friction. So when you pound this thing down into the bore, it takes a lot of force instead of one that's the right bore diameter for the piston. This one's just kind of a universal deal. And there's quite a bit of resistance when you pound it in because the thing's literally clamping. It has clamping force on the rings instead of, you know, you just kind of set the rings in and then literally you can just push it down with your thumb. This thing, you gotta beat the crap out of it with the butt end of a hammer to get it to go. So, our crank journal is all the way down. Make sure your crank journal is all the way down. And butt end of the hammer. That's it. And we are done. We push it all the way down. We're gonna flip it. Look at there. Talk about perfect, huh? Looks pretty good. Our little rubber hoses did the trick.
30 cents.
Not even 30 cents. It's probably like 10 cents worth of hose, not even. And so for torque specifications on these, there are 2 steps on the connecting rods. Come on, girl, come out of there. It's just too slippery. Bend it. There we go. Now she's working out. There. Okay. There are 2 torque specs for the connecting rod caps. And the first step is 18 foot-pounds. And the second step is 30 foot-pounds. And you keep this in mind, guys. This can vary. This is just strictly for a B16A2. I'm not giving you torque specs for a B18. I'm not giving you torque specs for a D series. This is strictly for a B16A2. And I mean, it might be similar with some things, but I just wanted to warn you guys, so don't be torquing certain engines to certain things that I'm telling you, because it might not be the same engine. Okay, like I said, that notch interlocks with the notch on the connecting rod. So push that bad boy down. Okay, and then I am going to push up on the piston with my fingers, and I'm going to tap the connecting rod cap down to make sure it is completely seated. Don't worry, it's a dead blow. It's not a friggin' normal hammer. You can roast me in the comments all you want, but that's how it is. Okay, so I am going to torque these really quick to 18 foot-pounds. There's no sequence, it's just, you just want to divide torquing them. You want to snug them down pretty evenly because you don't want to get the rod cap cockeyed. So I'm going to torque these to 18, and then I'm going to torque to 30, and then this will be completely done. Alright guys, my battery, I guess, took a shit. So we basically got the bottom end done. What you guys missed is, don't worry, I just set the head on there. It's not completely done. We just put the windage tray on. I bolted the oil pump. What were the oil pump? 10? I think it was 10. 12. Okay. For all you people that are torque freaks, torque on the oil pump was 12. Same for the rear main seal back there. And make sure when you're installing seals, guys, make sure when you install those seals, you put a little bit of grease on that seal so when you initially start it, it doesn't tear the seal. So if you like the video and you want to see more of this stuff, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you guys in the future. Peace!